is not an option for us now. And so our speakers and all are going to tell us what good things this does for us. And if they see areas that need, this is good because they're in the legislature. Ashley is looking at the legislation and we're gonna vote, okay? So, I invited also the commissioners and county council members. There are maps here. If you don't know what county council district you're in, over here is county commissioners. I want you to know what district you're in so you know whether to vote yay or nay when the election comes up. We do want to keep track of those things. So, with all of that said, I wanted to just encourage. Let me turn this over just a minute here. Well, maybe I will. I wanted us to have an orderly procedure. So we're going, after each speaker, we're going to have time for questions from you guys. And so please hold up your hand and I will bring the microphone to you, okay? If there is time left after the speakers and questions, you may talk personally with the speakers until 8:30. Is that okay? Well, you won't be here that long, but is that okay, JD?
I got about an hour.
Oh, okay. Both of them have about an hour. It's a good thing we have them first on the agenda. So, with no further discussion, we'll turn the meeting over to Scott. Is going to be our first speaker, and he has asked me to pass.
Those are for me.
Oh, okay. Pass these out to you, so I'll do that. And Scott, if you guys will you can share the microphone, and we'll get going.
Bill Hughes is here from County Council.
Oh, I did. I'm sorry. I said hello to him when he came in. Yeah.
Well, and he pointed out too, is this map?
That one's correct.
That one's correct, but the printout maps are not correct.
They're new ones?
That's the new one.
That's the new one, but the ones that are printed out are the old ones up at the table up there. Just
Oh.
FYI.
Oh, okay. This one is correct, though. I thought it was.
It is.
Yeah, okay.
Bill wouldn't
So,
know.
all of you, we do have a county councilman. Would you stand up, Bill, and let him see what you look like? District two. Okay, all right.
That's District 2.
Yeah.
All right, we're on it.
You didn't look at the county council and then, did you? Bill?
Well, that's what he's talking, it's the County Council.
I mean, the commissioners, I know
I
it's
didn't pay
correct.
attention to it, so.
That was correct.
I think it is.
Yeah, okay, all right, the maps are good. If you don't know what district you're in, or if you don't know who your county commissioner is, it's over here. Okay, and Ashley will speak when the legislators are finished. Ashley will speak.
Good to go. No pocket constitutions to pass out today. I was gonna count them and bring them with me today, but I left them at the office, so.
Can we move the lectern out of the way?
Yeah, we sure can.
Thank you.
If you want to move, we can move our tables together too, if you want.
I was just giving you a hard time.
Better?
Thanks a lot,
All right, you
Al.
bet.
Good to see your face.
I don't think I'm gonna have.
All right, just a quick session, wrap up too. I don't think I've met with you guys since then, but, really we made a lot of progress in a lot of different areas, this year. I'm low on complaints this year, so that must mean we've done a pretty good job, getting things out, maybe not, but, that's where we're at. In the interim, I've been meeting with all the schools in my district, kind of getting into, or what I was interested in seeing in the schools was, programs for getting kids to the workplace, that aren't gonna go to college, or
kids that may want to go to college and work their way through college. So I've actually been very pleasantly surprised with some of the programs that are offered, not just in Delaware County, but Randolph County as well. Lots of other stuff that's been going on, but I think what we're here today about is was Senate Bill 4's SEA for now. This is one I know both JD and I talked on this all through the session and weren't real happy with it. Voiced my opinions pretty loudly in our caucus. Don't have a lot of faith that I guess the health departments can pull this off. You know, we're telling people that do things that aren't good for them not to do them, basically, and that's probably not gonna work. I would imagine they'll be back to see us at some point in time in a couple of years here and need more money to move the needle. So in my opinion, it needed more work. There was a couple other problems. This followed COVID. Lots of people didn't trust what was going on at the state level. You know, from the governor's office, the health department, that group. So it was pretty bad timing to roll all this out too. But it is what it is. It's passed at this point. We've got to hope that we can make some progress in these areas. Again, I'm not real confident that's going to happen, but we've got almost, I think we're down to 12 or 13 counties that have either said they were going to or have already enrolled in the program. So it was a priority bill for the Senate side, the House side, and the governor's office to get through, so it's probably going to go somewhere. We were able to get some changes made in it that I think are good. One of the changes I asked for was kind of tall, that we get the governor's name and Dr. Box's name off of it. But we did what we could there. I think it does have, there are some good checks to it. It's not just the health department that signs off, it's the state budget office, so we can have some oversight there. But I don't know, you asked me to say some good things about it. I don't know if I covered any of those yet, but you know, if we are able to move the needle, what I passed out was basically what's on the health department's website to y'all.
I need some more of those.
I have some more of those.
You have more of them.
And this is where this money intends to move the, I've got more if you need them.
I just hold
I won't
some.
leave me one
Yeah,
in case I have to.
I'll give you back the.
Okay, just leave me one, so in case I need to refer back to it. But I do have an updated list, but it's kind of been chicken scratch up to get it up to today, so it's real hard for you guys to understand. So I didn't print that out for everybody. But if you want to see who's in and who's out, or who's going to be in and who's going to be out, I'll be happy to talk with you on that. If it were to do all these things, I think it would make a difference. You know, the idea behind all this, and you kind of see from the information I've passed out, is get the state out of the low end. You know, we're 6th, 7th, 9th, 19th, and 25th. And we fall, you know, towards the upper end of the state's rankings on the other side of this thing. Like I say, I don't have a lot of confidence we're going to get there, but now it's on its way. The way that it was set up for these counties, it was real hard for them not to turn down, or to turn down, excuse me. And I think most of the people, if you were sitting in their shoes, you probably would have done the same thing if you were at the county level. So I think I'll quit there and we'll move on to JD.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you for having us. I'll first, before we get started with the bill, I'll kind of do what Scott did and kind of give an overview of some of the things going on. I too have been going around schools in the district, to some of the local businesses in the district. Just spent a good portion of the day today up in Jay County with the RMC's utilities, hearing what they're doing to update the electric infrastructure and from a reliability standpoint. So just really getting out through the district, meeting with those business leaders in the area, as well as we both serve on interim study committees as well. So the interim study committees that I'm on this year are the Corn Marketing Council, the Drainage Task Force, Those are the two bigger ones that I'm gonna be on, this year. Actually, the corn market meets this week, so I'll be in Indianapolis Wednesday and Thursday for that one. Then, going back to Senate Enrolled Act, one other thing too, we did get some good news out of the state Supreme Court today. Senate Bill 1 special session, Planned Parenthood was denied their rehearing of that, so Senate Bill 1 special session goes into effect. There is still a preliminary indictment, or there is still a hold for the Marion County decision, but that is for a very narrowly focused group of people that would still be able to proceed. So it is, for the most part, it is in effect. I believe we will prevail in that court case as well, but obviously I can't speak too much on the ongoing litigation on that point. The Attorney General's office is on top of it though. So good news out of the Supreme Court this afternoon. Going back to Senate Bill 4, Scott covered most of, I guess what you would call the good, and that's hard to find too much good, and to be honest with you, I voted no, and I opposed the bill as well, so I didn't like the legislation, and still have concerns over it. One better pieces that was put in there that was not in the original bill is that the counties do have the option to opt out at any time now. That was not in the original bill, so that was an improvement. It would be better to have them have to re-up every so many years or narrow that focus down, but at least they can opt out at any time as well too. So that is an improvement in the bill. And we did reduce the funding that was being requested by the Department of Health from the original proposal. And it's still too much, but we did at least get it reduced. And that leads to one of my largest concerns with the bill is just the funding that's tied with it in general, coming from the state's general fund to supply this. We've got a growing problem with our state's Medicare, Medicaid portion. Actually, it's up to 18% of the budget. Now we are creating this new public health initiative that I agree with Scott. I think in 2 years they're going to be back asking for more because and their argument's going to be, I already see it coming. Their argument's going to be, well, we haven't had enough time, we don't have enough data to prove that it's working. So you just need to trust us, trust the experts, and throw more money at it. That's what they're going to come back and say. So it will be rehashed during the budget cycle. I mean, it is in the budget now, so it will be up for debate again in the budget cycle. It might not be a standalone bill, but we will have to have discussion again during the budget cycle. And then the other concern I have is making tweaks or improvements on this. If you look at the vote counts, there was 74 yeses, 21 noes, 4 excused on final passage in the House. The 4 excused, there's a conference committee going on at that time, I believe, and that's why they weren't in the room. And then in the Senate, it was 39 yeses and 10 noes. And if anybody wants to look at those vote counts, feel free to there. It did pass overwhelmingly, so the odds of the legislative body and its current makeup having the votes change much of it, I honestly don't see there being much happen this next year, so I don't want to get anybody's hopes up either, but I did oppose this legislation from the beginning, and I still have problems with it.
Okay. Scott, this was your first session in the Senate, right? But JD, I'm not sure, I know you've been there for a while, but I'm not sure how long.
This was my 5th session. So I was elected in
Okay.
2018, 2019 was my first session.
Okay, all right. Okay, if any of you want to ask questions, just hold up your hand, I'll bring the mic over. I want to be sure that everybody in the room can hear the responses, so questions for Scott or JD?
Hey, let me add one other thing, Margaret, too. We did get it in there that it was originally, when this bill came through, it was gonna be just the commissioners to approve it. And I had a real problem with that coming from county council, that there wouldn't be some kind of oversight approval. And that's kind of where it turned the corner to become more of a grant program where there had to be a match from the county, and the county council had to have a say in this too. So there's
Right.
two areas of oversight locally, and again, you know, if they decide this isn't working or doesn't work for each county, they can always pull back on it at some point in time, unless there's a change in the law.
Okay, so now surely all you guys are not sitting here with no questions.
I don't really know a whole lot about this, but
Wait just a minute, please, I'll bring them
I
up.
haven't asked it yet.
I'm a real strong advocate for incentivizing performance, and I wondered if there is any, incentive for the counties that accept this to, improve their performance and potentially receive better funding in the future.
With that first, or?
You can take it, it don't matter, I can't.
Yeah, I don't know that there's specifically incentive in there. There is some directive on where we wanna see changes again, and that's where the oversight at the state budget office, comes into play as well. But that doesn't mean that we can't look to add incentives going down the road, especially if we see this back in a couple of years and they want more money.
Because as you know it, when you're getting a grant, there's no reason for you to fix the problem, because down the road, you can apply for another grant. So that might be something to consider going forward, is it actually incentivizing the counties that are doing well.
And so I had a conversation with Dr. Box on this. I actually had multiple conversations with Dr. Box during the legislative session as she was trying to lobby for the support for the bill, and I had a similar conversation on incentivizing. And one of the reasons they didn't want to put anything into statute for that was each county is going to have different targets that they're, and then the other part of it too, when it's which metrics are you looking at? It was hard to get a clear answer which ones that they're going to come back and report to us back in 2 years on which ones to make, because I'm looking at it from I'm on Ways and Means, so I want to know, especially here in 2 years, okay, what's working, what's not working, and they couldn't give a clear answer on that, and that was in committee.
I would tell you that Jamie Bain sent me a lot of information this afternoon. He has been very helpful. And so if any of you have any questions, you should feel free to contact him. Jamie is the administrator of the Delaware County Health Commission, yeah. So don't hesitate to call him at all if you have questions.
And just one follow-up on that, they do have to come and re-up for this plan with an updated plan to get approved again through the Board of Health, but also the state budget agency.
So are there points of accountability that they have to reach, like on an annual basis, or are they starting out with a target audience of so many people and they're gonna be checking, I mean, what's the accountability in here?
Yeah, the way I believe it's set up now, and I think this is somewhat subject to interpretation, but each county board will assess the problems in that county that they want to correct with this money, put together a plan, get that plan approved by the state and the state budget agency, and then go after that plan. So if they're showing improvement, so those numbers are what they are, and those numbers will be set out, but is there real oversight to it? My answer is no.
I believe not.
We have a doctor in the house.
Yeah.
Dr. Lindquist.
Are there any mandates? I'm not from Indiana, I'm across the border in Ohio, and I deal with the legislature over there. And our concern is something like this coming into Ohio, which will have specific mandates rather than local, focal targets.
The main mandates that are in the bill is a certain percentage of the funds have to be designated to certain public services. I'm sorry, I don't have that list in front of me, but there are, and really it was to try and limit health departments, especially some overzealous health departments, from going in and over-regulating on septic permitting and other, where we've had some issues with some health departments kind of being too aggressive on certain areas, permitting requirements than need That's the major mandates in the bill, that they have to essentially stick to those funding mechanisms that are in place. I'm sorry, I'm vaguely remembering that portion of it, I don't, and then they also have to, cooperate with the schools as well, on, let's see, that was the, on the, like on the emergency, medicines, on the stockpiling, they would be tasked with that, but there's, no, it's really, for the most part, it's all county decided locally. And there's provisions in the bill that prohibits, any state Department of Health regulations coming down on top of the locals that was not addressed in the bill.
So it's totally targeted.
It's going to the locals.
So just to make sure that I know correctly, let's say next year, the governor comes down with the commission and says every county will follow X, Y, and Z. Do you have to do that as a county, or do you have to give the money back if you indeed want to be autonomous, not meaning that you have to follow the statewide? Because it's my kind of understanding that this money comes with the string. The string is you'll do what we said, and if you do not, then you'll pay us back the money if you do not want to do that. Is that correct or not?
That is not correct.
Not correct. Okay.
Yeah, this is more geared towards trying to improve the health in the counties, and the feeling behind it, I think, is that they feel like the local health departments are better prepared to assess their counties and know what those needs are. And those needs may not be the same in every county, especially when you're in highly populated counties versus rural counties too. I think there was some concern, I think, from the health department side, whether some of the rural counties would sign on, because there was some pushback from some of the rural counties, but their claim is they tend to benefit more from having more money for public health and are better prepared to move the needle than some of the larger counties would be, because of the population and the problems that they have in the larger.
Well, when I watched the Senate, the hearings at the beginning, at first they was gonna make every county do it.
In the original bill,
Yeah.
that was the case.
Yeah.
There was
And
that was put in the
money
House.
to everybody to make it do it.
Yeah.
Other questions? Good, I'm glad to see our council questioning.
It was not so much a question, but for the information of the group, I thought this might be helpful. Currently, the Board of Health in Delaware County has three separate budgets because there are three separate funding sources. The main one is the 2023 budget was $858,000, $858. They're requesting for next year $840, and that's the mandated amount that constitutes the match to the state funding. Then there are two smaller budgets that they have also. One of them for next year would be $39,700 is the request. The other one is $103,000, was $119,000. But the state money for next year goes into a new fund, and Delaware County share is $1,299,638.
Will you repeat that, please?
$1,299,000
$1.3 million.
and change.
That's close enough, thanks.
$1,299,638. And the other piece of information, as you may be aware, we're starting our budget hearings in 2 weeks, on Wednesday, September 6th. The Board of Health is scheduled at 4:30 that afternoon, 4:30 to 5. We're not always on schedule, but that's for your information. And as you may also be aware, the budget hearings will be live streamed this year.
Thank you.
One very quick, brief question. Is there any of this that overlaps the federal money coming in the localities?
No, this is all out of the general fund.
It's all out of general fund, there's no federal connection at all.
Correct.
They cannot. I mean, that's part of the bill, isn't it? That our match cannot be any federal money or any fees or anything that's already there. It has to be another source.
You guys are talking about two different things. He's asking if the federal government can feed in, and you're talking about grants from state and federal or fees from, say, permitting and stuff like that. Your match cannot be made up of permitting funds. So your health department goes out and does a permit for a sewer system or whatever. The money collected from that cannot go towards the county match. That's a separate piece. So this is a dedicated amount of money that's going into this account, which, as the councilman said, is for Indiana as it stands, it's about the same amount as the budget that they have now. So, because I looked at this very carefully, I was very, very skeptical because I was worried that this was going to increase local taxes. It's still coming out of your taxes through the state, but those two are definitely different. So your county is putting that money in so that way it can be delegated out through the different programs in the health department.
Okay? Other questions? Everybody's, okay, I thought surely we're not.
Is there any plans, I have a huge concern to put any type of medical clinics inside public schools?
There's nothing in the bill that will be putting true medical clinics in the bill. They can partner with the schools and other providers, but they could already do that. So like Union schools, for example, in Randolph County, they already have a medical clinic in the school, and that they could have done that. They did that. It was in the works before this bill passed, so that could already happen.
Okay, if everybody's had their questions answered, we're gonna go ahead and take a break a little bit early so that you can have a chance, if you wanna talk to the legislators.
Do I get a chance to speak?
You wanna go?
Oh, yes, I have so much to say.
She wants the legislators to
I was
hear
wondering
her,
about that.
okay?
Yeah.
All right, Scott, these are extra.
Okay.
I'll pass these out for, go, Ashley.
All right, so I want to thank Scott and JD because they illustrated a lot of my points perfectly. And what this really comes down to is what kind of a price are you willing to put on your freedom? Now, a lot of legislators and even your neighbors over in Wayne County are hearing from Brad Barrett, who is the sponsor of the bill, and the chairman of the Health Commission. He's telling them that, hey, we are good guys and we protected you by putting this clause in here that says the counties retain autonomy. Because if you go back to those original commission meetings, they talked about how they're gonna force every county to comply with these additional metrics, the core public health services. And they talked about how they were going to use that financial incentive, those requirements, to force them into opting in. I really encourage you, if you've not watched the videos from the June 30th meeting of the Public Health Commission, to go do those. Those are on our website. I've shortened them down into about 10-minute clips. Also links to the full videos so that way you can watch it and make sure that it's in context. But it's really disheartening when you see this, and yes, the legislature did put in a clause saying that the counties retain autonomy. However, they also left a clause in there stating that the eligibility for funding is dependent on compliance with the rules from the health department. So administrative rules that are not voted on or put into place by elected officials, but rather the bureaucrats down at the health department. And those are what your county is going to be held accountable to. Now, if we look at historically what has happened, and COVID was a great example, you're right. What did our county health, or our state health department do? Okay, so, yeah. Your administrative rules can be changed at any time. If you look in the code, and I need to refresh my website because the blog isn't posting, but I have all this, I put everything out there because I want to be transparent. I don't want you guys to trust me at my word. I want you to go find out for yourself and feel comfortable with what's happening.
because that's what government is supposed to be. That's what your elected officials are supposed to do. And unfortunately, whether it is through ignorance or whether it is because they are maybe listening to too many of the wrong voices, they're missing these key points. So your eligibility is tied to administrative rules that can change at any time. Looking at that code, you can see that there are requirements for mandatory testing, vaccination in schools. When the COVID vaccine came out and was listed as recommended by the CDC, everybody was up in arms. Everybody was so upset because they thought that the children were going to be mandated to get the COVID vaccine. And the State Department of Health may or may not have gotten a few calls from some of you and made an announcement that they would not be changing that requirement, because through those administrative rules, they have the power to do that. They are granted that power by the state legislature. So when we talk about strings within this bill, we're talking about those. And when we talk about the concern over the financial strings, and no, there is nothing in the bill that says that the counties will have to pay it back. But there's also nothing in the bill that says that the counties don't have to pay it back. So it's very vague. And I've heard legislator after legislator say this, and yet here we are, they voted the darn thing through. And, you know, thank you for being so honest, Scott. I really appreciate your candid conversation, and I want to work with you. I truly want to make Indiana better. My goal in politics is to make it so that way we can be proud of our politicians, so we can give them firm ground to stand on and help them do their jobs of representing the people. I truly want that. And so if you want honest opinion and you want backing and you want to make sure that your citizens aren't going to be angry, let's have the conversations. This tonight is perfect, so thank you for being brave and coming here and having this conversation. So, you know, there's nothing in the bill that says that we're gonna have to pay it back, but there's nothing in there that says that we're not. What happens when your county accepts the funding and I don't know, in November or December, all of a sudden the next new variant comes out or pandemic phase 2 comes through, and President Biden is now saying, hey, you know what? You're gonna have to wear masks, and guess what? Your church, I'm sorry, sir, but you, pastor, are gonna have to tell your congregation that you can't gather in groups larger than 25.
Or at all.
Who enforced this in Wayne County? Who
None of
enforced
what
it?
she's talking about is in the bill. I mean, just, what
No,
not?
it
I don't know
is.
if it's in the bill. No, it's not.
Go look at the administrative rules and see what the health department has the powers to do.
Wait a
And
second.
they're contingent. You're interrupting my time. I was patient and silent the whole time you spoke.
But I was honest.
And is there, show me where I'm wrong. Show me where the health department cannot add that to the administrative rules.
They cannot have a callback provision through administrative rules. That have to go through the budget agency.
To be eligible for funding, they have to follow the rules. Do you want the code so you can look it up?
I can look it up.
Okay,
Can you give us the codes?
sure. Indiana Code 1646-10-6, that's the eligibility clause. Number 3 is where it it's either number 1 or number 3, where it talks about the requirement is to follow the administrative rules put forward by the State Department, okay? So they have 30 days to rectify those transgressions against those rules, and if they don't rectify them, they will no longer be eligible for funding. So again, does that mean that they have to pay it back? I don't know, it's not in the bill. Does that mean that they just miss out on the next year's funding? I don't know, it's not in the bill. So there are a lot of gray areas. So what is your right to freedom worth? Is it worth $1.3 million? Can you put a price on freedom? So, we heard both of these gentlemen talk about how there's not a lot of good in this bill. Simply voting right, which I appreciate you voting no, and you were consistent in your voting, but simply voting right is not enough. These guys have to stand up to the caucus. They have to be free thinkers. When I raise my children, I raise them to question everything. That creates a lot of problems in our home because we're all very strong-willed. But you know what? I want my kids to ask questions. I want them to think for themselves. I don't want them to be lemmings and all jump off the cliff because somebody leading did it. That's not how government is supposed to work. And yet we hear them talk about how bad this was, how there's nothing good, but it was signed off by the governor. And it was signed off by both the Senate and the House committees. And so we had to do it. No, that is not what we elected you to do. Stand up and be brave. If you guys want to fix this, you've got this legislative season coming up. First of all, I think the biggest concern on everybody's mind is their right to bodily integrity. I've got a petition in the back of the room, please sign it. Bodily integrity is your right to be free of interference, to be whole and intact. That's medical liberty, and that's what we want. So be expecting calls. You said you were low on complaints, so I'll send some calls your way. But we want our bodily integrity, and that's why this is so important to us, is because we've seen this violated at the hands of our health departments and enforced. So first of all, Bodily Integrity Act needs to be passed legislative session 2024, period. The least you can do is fix your mistake and the negligence. And Mr. Barrett seemed to be surprised, Representative Barrett seemed to be surprised when a group of his constituents talked to him about this, and he seemed, by their report, to be surprised that this clause was in there. So I'm hopeful that you guys will go back down to the State House and at a minimum, remove this. Let's give people back their bodily integrity. There were several other things that were impressed upon. We talked about mandates a little bit. It's a 40-60 split. Those are on the core public health services. So there's two generalized categories. The 40% is typically the things that are done by your health departments. Now you're permitting the sanitation and that sort of thing. And then the 60 split, it's more about making sure that the money is kind of going to some of these newer health programs. I'm not convinced that this isn't going to turn into a Medicaid for all situation, and I think we all need to be watching for that, because I even talked about this on the House floor. I was testifying against the bill, and Cindy Ledbetter, Representative Cindy Ledbetter from the southwest side of the state, agreed with me that this was more about treating chronic disease rather than prevention, and public health is prevention. I have lots of ideas. I naively said when I started this journey that I would start out in medical liberty and secure our medical liberty in 5 years. We're going into year 4, just to put that out there. And then I would move on to healthcare reform, because we have some serious problems. But one of those problems is, in this country, we take and dump truckloads full of money on health problems, and it doesn't change.
That's right.
I have tremendous amount of experience in this because of my healthcare background. I helped develop the heart failure program at a major regional hospital. And I watched as these things that would have made difference focused on prevention. One of our plans was to take our patients and teach them how to cook real food, because most of them buy from fast food or from boxes. And we wanted to take and teach our patients how to use real food, because they didn't know how to use it. That is prevention.
Amen.
Let's take and put a nutritional program in these schools. Let's teach these kids how to eat real food. Let's have them grow it in the garden. Let's make that part of their curriculum, because where does health start? With your nutrition, what you're putting in your body. We grow self-respect, and we understand that we have one body. This is all we get. We have to instill those values in our kids. That is how we change public health. It doesn't come through a pill. It doesn't come through a needle. I can show you that. And this is what makes me so upset with this program, is because they did put a generalized framework here. When I made the recommendations of making this a grant program, what I talked about was, okay, Indiana State is going to say, let's address nutrition in school, and you can have X numbers of dollars, and they apply for the funding, and they get the funding for a specific measure. When they get the funding, they execute that. This isn't just about population served. That's not an adequate measure of success, because that's what it's going to come back to. Mark my words. Your health departments are going to say, oh, we served 10,000 more families this year, and it was so wonderful. And I'm sure that they are trying their best. But without the right guidance, it doesn't amount to anything. We're flushing money down the toilet. And so we need our legislators, we send you to the State House to represent us. Not Eli Lilly, not the Hospital Association, we sent you to the State House to represent us.
Yep.
And so we have to do that, so let's work together. You said earlier, I think we're all on the same side, we all are. We all want a healthier Indiana. Let's make that happen together, rather than working with the big interest groups. Okay, so, I'm trying to go through all my notes and make sure I hit all these points. I think you guys get the point. You can go on my website and look at all these things. I encourage you to question me. The handout that we passed out, it's rough, and I'm sorry, there's a lot of words on there, it's not pretty. But there's talking points at the bottom. Go to your county commissioners, because they're going to have to make a choice. Are they going to opt out of this? Let's just pretend, hypothetically speaking, that mandates come back. The government, federal government tells the health departments that they have to do X, Y, and Z, which would be requiring masks, limiting gatherings, and shutting down non-essential businesses. And your health departments were the ones who did that. If the federal government comes through and says that, and they make that an administrative rule for threatening or emergent respiratory infections or whatever the case may be, is your county gonna say, we're done with this funding, we don't want any more? Now, you're a year or 2 years in, you've hired 6 people, and they're all really fantastic people. You know, Rebecca, she's got the 12 kids, and her husband's a pastor, and he don't make a lot of money, so, you know, if we cut Rebecca's salary, that's really hard. Or if we have patients that are depending on these services because they can't go to get them anywhere else, and all of a sudden we yank that funding out, where are they gonna get the money to replace this, or are they gonna stay in it because they can't get by without the funding? They're just gonna cut those services willy-nilly? Those are not easy decisions to make. I wouldn't wanna be in those shoes, so when you're making these decisions, you really have to ask yourself, do I want to do this? Now, Mr. Alexander brought up the map, and he showed me, yes, all these counties are opting in, because why would you turn down $1.3 million in 1 year? It doesn't make sense. A lot of these counties are talking about how they don't know how they're gonna spend this money, so do you think your taxpayer dollars are gonna be spent well? I mean, really, do you think that they're gonna be spent well? Do you think you're gonna see a return on investment? Or is our state budget gonna continue to blow? I'm betting the latter. Johnson County, God bless them, they denied this program. And in the handout, there's the article, I'll make sure the blog post gets up tonight. You'll be able to read in the Daily Journal. They talked about the additional strings. They talked about, they gave really common sense reasons as to why they didn't opt in. And they said, we may do this in the future, but right now we don't see it as worth it because we're providing all these services. Is your health department providing all these services already? Could you get grants instead and not risk losing your freedom? How can we make this work? Is there opportunity for growth of nonprofits or charitable organizations to fill some of these gaps and work together? Because I'm not gonna go into that. I'll leave that be. I encourage you to look at the arguments made by Johnson County. And the last thing I will say, counties can opt out at any time. So if your county opted in and you don't want to be in there, you can still go talk to your county commissioners because it isn't over. They haven't even gotten the money, so it'd be really easy for them to rescind this. And it goes the entire time. They can opt out at any time. So if your freedom is worth a couple phone calls and going down to the county commissioners meetings, I'm asking you to step up. Does anybody have any questions?
I want to hold your questions. I want to have us take a break because our legislators cannot.
I've got one quick question for the legislators, real quick, just to
Okay.
follow up.
Well,
I
was going to let you guys personally talk too.
Well, I just think it might be good for everybody. They can hear me from here. Scott, JD said that what she was saying was wrong. She read through a state code. So my question is, if we all go home tonight and we all study that state code and do you have a thought on what she was saying? Do you agree with JD? Is she lying? Is she wrong? Is that code straight? Where are we at with that?
I think that's the interpretation of the code, and I haven't read the code, so I can't give you an answer to that.
I'll follow up with you on that.
I think that's fair.
Okay, well, one reason why I wanted to take a break a little early, I want us to continue with you, actually. I have the information from Jamie Bain, who is the administrator of the Delaware County Health Department too, and so we can look at that, and Ashley can comment. Of course, we want her response to those things. So if you, we have a refreshment table back here, if you wanna grab something, Pepsi or whatever, for about 10 minutes, and then we'll come back, and in the meantime, we'll let Scott and JD talk to you if you have something you'd like to talk to them personally about, okay? See you back here in about 10 minutes.